Welcome to the Mystery and History channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one. The Kimberley Diamond Mine in South Africa is recorded in 1872, a few years after the discovery of an 83 1/2 carat stone that drew thousands of fortune seekers to the region. Known as the Big Hole, the excavation became one of the largest open-pit mines in the world, the result of intensive labor by thousands of people seeking mineral wealth. In 1943, British sappers are photographed training to disarm mines by touch alone, a practice developed so they could also perform the task in darkness. The drill consisted of using only the sense of touch without sight to identify mechanisms and learn to handle them with precision and safety. Canadian soldiers are photographed in 1952 playing hockey on an improvised ice rink on the Imjin River in Gyeonggi-do Province in northern South Korea. The record was made during the Korean War, when troops sought leisure moments to ease the routine of service. In 1939, two Red Cross nurses are recorded playing soccer during a break from their duties. The scene shows a moment of relaxation and lightness amid the responsibilities of humanitarian work. Rita Hayworth is recorded in the 1940s, a period when she became one of Hollywood's greatest stars and a symbol of the golden age of American cinema. Born Margarita Carmen Cancino, she achieved international fame after successes such as Gilda in 1946, which helped fix her image as an icon of beauty and talent. In 1948, young David Hensley appears in a public fundraising campaign for a new hospital dedicated to treating poliomyelitis. He is seen using leg braces, a common aid for children affected by the disease, before a vaccine was developed. In 1923, children in Germany are photographed building a kite from banknotes during the period of hyperinflation that followed World War I. That year, the German currency lost so much value that high-denomination notes became nearly useless for basic purchases. In 1934, maintenance workers are photographed repairing the Graf Zeppelin in mid-air over the South Atlantic after the airship suffered damage in a storm. Launched in 1928, the Graf Zeppelin was one of the world's most famous airships, traveling to dozens of countries and making transcontinental flights that helped establish long-distance air travel. In 1975, during the evacuation of civilians from Saigon in the final moments of the American presence in Vietnam, helicopters were pushed off aircraft carrier decks into the South China Sea. The action was taken to free deck space and allow more aircraft carrying refugees to land. A soldier is photographed with a machine gun at Tiananmen Square in Beijing in 1989. The record was made during one of the most striking moments of modern Chinese history, when the square became a stage for demonstrations of global impact. At 8:59 in the morning on February 19, 1945, the first wave of United States Navy landing craft moved toward the beaches of Iwo Jima. The scene shows the organized scale of the operation, which involved thousands of troops and hundreds of ships supporting the advance. Spectators attend the Holland Pop Festival in Kralingse Park in Rotterdam, Netherlands, on June 26, 1970. The event is considered one of Europe's first major music festivals, bringing together thousands of young people in a cultural celebration inspired by the spirit of Woodstock a year earlier in the United States. On April 30, 1945, war photographer Lee Miller was recorded in Adolf Hitler's apartment in Munich on the same day that the Nazi regime came to an end. Miller, serving as a correspondent for Vogue magazine, closely followed Allied advances and documented the final moments of the conflict in Europe. The ship Titanic is shown in 1912 still in the shipyard, positioned in dry dock for final preparations before its maiden voyage. Built in Belfast by Harland and Wolff, the ocean liner was designed to be the largest and most luxurious of its time, a symbol of engineering and technological progress in the early 20th century. The German airship Hindenburg is photographed on August 8, 1936, passing the Empire State Building over Manhattan while heading to Lakehurst, New Jersey, from Germany. Considered one of the largest aircraft ever built, the Hindenburg symbolized the height of the airship era, offering luxurious long-distance transatlantic travel. William Patrick Hitler, the son of Adolf Hitler's half-brother Alois, is photographed on March 6, 1944, as he takes the oath in the United States Navy at a recruiting station in New York City. In 1949, an ice cream truck drives through the streets of Brooklyn in New York City, a symbol of post-war urban daily life in the United States. These vehicles, brightly decorated and often accompanied by music or bells, became childhood icons, bringing treats directly to local neighborhoods. A Soviet veteran is portrayed in 1966 before the Eternal Flame during commemorations of Victory Day. The date, celebrated on May 9th, marks the surrender of Nazi Germany in 1945 and is one of the most important events in the Soviet collective memory. In August of 1927, Adolf Hitler was photographed in a portrait session wearing lederhosen, the traditional dress of Bavaria. The images were made by Heinrich Hoffmann, the official photographer of the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Howard Hughes is photographed in the 1940s at the controls of the Spruce Goose, officially the Hughes H-4 Hercules, the largest flying boat ever built. Made mainly of plywood to work around aluminum restrictions during World War II, the aircraft weighed about 200 metric tons, which is about 220 short tons, and had a wingspan of about 97 meters, which is about 318 feet, a world record to this day. The Hughes H-4 Hercules, popularly called the Spruce Goose, was built by businessman Howard Hughes in 1947 and is shown here as one of the greatest achievements of 20th century aviation. Designed during World War II to carry heavy loads, the airplane was built mainly of plywood because aluminum was scarce at the time. Barack Obama, at 10 years of age, appears beside his father, also named Barack Obama, in a rare photograph together. Born in Hawaii, the future President of the United States had little contact with his father, who left to study at Harvard when he was only 2 and returned only once to visit him. In 1977, a group of boys is photographed in the Bronx neighborhood of New York City in a scene that depicts urban life of the time. The Bronx was going through a period of social challenges, but also cultural energy, serving as the birthplace of artistic movements that would shape music, dance, and fashion, such as hip-hop and breakdance. Sigourney Weaver is pictured in 1978 testing a flamethrower during preparation for the film Alien, directed by Ridley Scott. Released in 1979, the feature would make Weaver an icon of science fiction cinema as she portrayed Ellen Ripley. In the 1940s, a mother is recorded repairing the family car in a scene that reflects everyday practicality as well as the social changes of the period. During and after World War II, many women assumed roles traditionally assigned to men, including mechanical maintenance and work outside the home. In 1957, a 14-year-old George Harrison, a 16-year-old John Lennon, and a 15-year-old Paul McCartney are photographed performing as singers at a wedding, still before the official formation of the Beatles. In 1977, Bob Marley is photographed on his tour bus with one toe bandaged after an injury that would become significant in his life. At that time, the Jamaican singer was already an international star, bringing reggae and messages of cultural identity to audiences around the world. In 1983, Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill are photographed together during a period marked by the success of the original Star Wars trilogy. Fisher, who played Princess Leia, and Hamill, who played Luke Skywalker, were already recognized worldwide as central faces of the saga created by George Lucas. In 1944, Judy Garland and Frank Sinatra are photographed together, bringing two of the 20th century's greatest voices into one record. At that time, Garland was already recognized for her role in The Wizard of Oz in 1939 and for her musical film career, while Sinatra was emerging as one of the era's most popular singers, winning crowds with his vocal style. In 1906, Julius Duke was photographed in a Chicago police station after being detained for wearing women's clothing, including a blouse, a skirt, and a wig. The scene illustrates the strict social and legal norms of the time, when expressions of identity or clothing choices could be targeted for repression. Burt Reynolds is photographed in 1971 behind the scenes of deliverance during a break in filming. Directed by John Boorman and released in 1972, the feature became a landmark of American cinema and propelled Reynolds to international stardom. In 1970, Harrison Ford is recorded in his days as a carpenter, a trade he worked at before achieving worldwide fame in film. In the image, he appears just after completing construction of musician Sergio Mendes's recording studio, a project he worked on with other professionals. In 1980, the restaurant Windows on the World, located at the top of the former World Trade Center in New York City, is recorded in full operation. Opened in 1976 on the 107th floor of the North Tower, the space offered one of the city's most impressive views and drew tourists, executives, and local residents. In 1957, Daytona Beach, Florida, is shown at the height of its fame as a tourist destination and a site for auto competitions. The beach was known for allowing cars to drive on its hard-packed sand, becoming a unique place where leisure and speed met. This environment contributed to the growth of stock car racing in the United States. In 1956, finalists of the Miss Correct Posture contest posed beside their X-rays in a competition that judged not only beauty, but also body alignment. The event was part of an initiative linked to chiropractic professionals who sought to promote the importance of correct posture for health. In 1963, chemist Howard G. Rogers, head of research at Polaroid, is photographed with colleagues and approximately 5,000 bottles of chemical compounds used in developing the instant color film process. In 1930, physicist Albert Einstein posed in Berlin for sculptor Arthur Lowenthal, who produced a bust in his honor. The work sought to capture not only the scientist's features, but also the renown he already held as one of the most influential figures in modern science. In 1927, the famous Solvay Conference took place in Brussels, Belgium, bringing together some of the greatest scientists of the 20th century. In all, 29 people took part, 17 of whom already were or would become Nobel Prize winners. In 1955, a young Jim Henson is photographed creating Kermit the Frog, a character that would later become known worldwide. The first puppet was handmade from an old coat that belonged to Henson's mother and ping pong balls adapted to form the eyes. In 1952, Copenhagen, Denmark, is the setting of the vibrant Storyville Jazz Club, one of the most notable spaces for spreading jazz in post-war Europe. Inspired by the name of the famous New Orleans district, the club became a meeting point for Danish and foreign musicians and also drew major American jazz artists touring the continent. In 1955, American actress Lana Turner is recorded in a portrait that reflects the height of her Hollywood career. Known as one of the great stars of the golden age of cinema, Turner gained fame not only for striking beauty, but also for notable roles in successful films such as The Postman Always Rings Twice in 1946 and Peyton Place in 1957. In 1947, Elizabeth Taylor, still a teenager and rising as a Hollywood star, is photographed cooking alongside her mother in Los Angeles. At that time, Taylor had already gained notice with films like National Velvet in 1944, yet she still lived family moments that showed her youth away from the screen. Marilyn Monroe is photographed at Grand Central Station in New York City on New Year's Eve of 1955. Already established as one of Hollywood's biggest stars, Monroe drew attention wherever she went, and her presence in one of the city's busiest places symbolized the meeting of glamour and everyday urban life. Soccer player Alfredo Di Stefano is shown in 1964 seated on the Real Madrid bench while smoking a cigarette, a scene reflecting habits common at the time but unimaginable today in professional sports. Manute Bol, the tallest player in National Basketball Association history, appears defending the rim during his college years in the 1980s. Standing 7 feet 7 inches tall, he was noted for his remarkable wingspan and rare defensive ability. Chicago's Marina Towers are shown in 1963 with emphasis on the open spiral parking decks, one of the project's most iconic elements. Designed by architect Bertrand Goldberg, the twin petal-shaped residential towers were considered a landmark of modern urban architecture. In 1935, the crowning of Miss Idaho Potato is recorded, a contest created to promote the importance of potatoes as the signature agricultural product of the state of Idaho in the United States. Such events were part of an American tradition of state fairs and festivals that combined cultural celebration, agricultural promotion, and community entertainment. In 1986, workers known as liquidators operated near the damaged reactor at Chernobyl in what was then the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. They were mobilized to contain the effects of the nuclear accident by removing debris, building barriers, and installing containment structures. Oxford bags, trousers with extremely wide legs, became a striking fashion of the 1920s. Originating among students at the University of Oxford in England, the garments were created as a stylish alternative to restrictions on sportswear in academic settings. Around 1925, a promotional photograph records the Hollywoodland housing development in Los Angeles, alongside the famous sign erected in 1923. Initially built to publicize the project and meant to stand only a short while, the sign became one of the greatest cultural icons of the 20th century. Women shop for perfume and jewelry at the Illum department store in Copenhagen, Denmark in 1904. Founded in 1891, Illum was already considered one of the city's most elegant stores, offering luxury goods and imported novelties that drew the urban elite. A young person wearing headphones is photographed in a San Francisco arcade in 1982 during the golden age of video games. Arcades were popular gathering places for youth, bringing people together to compete in classics like Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, and Space Invaders. In 1966, long-haired students protest at their high school after being forced to cut their hair, an episode that reflects the cultural clashes of the decade. Long hair had become a symbol of youth identity and dissent, associated with the counterculture gaining strength in the United States and elsewhere. In May of 1949, inventor Charles L. Langs introduced a bold beachwear innovation, a pair of cups that could be attached directly to a woman's body by adhesive. The proposal emerged at a time when beach fashion was changing, with growing emphasis on practicality and freedom of movement. In 1931, a coin-operated hot dog vending machine is recorded at a railway station in Germany, symbolizing the search for convenience and innovation in urban life. These machines offered quick meals to travelers and matched the fast pace of rail transport, already one of the main means of travel at the time. In 1918, a Ford automobile was adapted and turned into a mobile lunch counter on the streets of Washington, District of Columbia, a creative example of early 20th century urban entrepreneurship. The vehicle, modified to serve quick meals, shows how the spread of automobiles opened new practical and commercial possibilities. In 1953, a group of teenagers is photographed on top of Preikestolen, also known as Pulpit Rock, one of Norway's most iconic sites. Located more than 600 meters above the Lysefjord, which is about 1,970 feet, the rock plateau offers one of the region's most impressive panoramic views. A street in the city of Tromsø in northern Norway is recorded during the 1960s, showing daily life in one of Europe's farthest north regions. Known as the Gateway to the Arctic, Tromsø already played an important role as a cultural and university center and as a strategic point for polar expeditions. In 1960, workers are recorded packing caviar for export at the Astrakhan fish plant in what was then the Soviet Union. Located near the Volga River Delta and the Caspian Sea, the region was famous for caviar production, considered one of the most valuable and sought-after products in the international market. Grape harvesting at the Shakhnau State Winery Farm in Tajikistan is recorded in 1962, when the region was part of the Tajik Soviet Socialist Republic. The scene shows rural workers engaged in the vintage, an activity central to producing wine and related goods for local consumption and for other Soviet republics. Around 1916, ambulances in Calcutta were recorded as part of a fleet donated by wealthy Indians and other supporters of the British Empire to aid the war effort. These vehicles played an essential role in transporting the wounded, representing both the modernization of medical services and the mobilization of civilian resources in wartime. French weightlifter Ernest Cadine, an Olympic champion at the 1920 Antwerp Games, is portrayed in 1923, showing his physique. Born in 1893, Cadine won the gold medal in the light heavyweight category, securing his place in French sports history. In 1949, Stockholm hosted a women's national boxing championship that brought together competitors from many countries, including Italy, Switzerland, Sweden, the United States, England, Yugoslavia, and Germany. The event marked an important moment for women's presence in sports traditionally dominated by men, showing courage, discipline, and technique in a ring that was still not easily accessible to them. In 1935, new recruits of the British Regiment 7th the Queen's Own Hussars are photographed practicing balance drills on wooden horses. The technique was part of cavalry training, helping soldiers build posture, coordination, and confidence before riding real animals. In 1942, a man is photographed receiving a tattoo at a time when the practice was still associated mainly with sailors, dock workers, and specific groups. The process was done by hand or with simple machines, reflecting the artisanal tradition of tattooing in the early 20th century. Life along the Berlin Wall, erected in 1961, is portrayed in a scene that shows how the barrier directly affected the daily lives of the city's residents. The wall, which separated East Berlin from West Berlin, became one of the most powerful symbols of the Cold War. In 1945, people are recorded enjoying the sun on a beach in France at a moment that symbolized a return to normal life after years of global tension. Sunbathing, popular since the 1930s, became increasingly associated with leisure, health, and the idea of well-being. Al Capone's cell at Eastern State Penitentiary in Pennsylvania is recorded in 1929, when the famous gangster spent 9 months there. Unlike ordinary cells, his space had relatively comfortable furnishings, including a bed, a rug, a table, and even a radio, which drew press attention at the time. In the 1970s, the Sydney Opera House in Australia is recorded under construction, highlighting its famous concrete shells that would become a global architectural icon. Designed by Danish architect Jørn Utzon, the project began in 1959 and faced delays and technical challenges due to its innovative and complex design. In 1909, workers are photographed leveling hills in Seattle, United States, as part of a major urban regrading project known as the Seattle Regrades. Begun in 1897 and extended until 1930, the process transformed the rough topography of downtown into flat land, easing the expansion of streets, buildings, and modern infrastructure. In 1950, the first-class section of an airplane is recorded, revealing the style and comfort of the so-called golden age of commercial aviation. Seats were roomy with generous legroom, and services included elaborate meals served on china, as well as personalized attention. 2 clandestine liquor producers are detained by federal agents near St. Paul, Minnesota in 1921 during Prohibition in the United States. The law, in force from 1920 to 1933, banned the making, transport, and sale of alcoholic beverages, encouraging the rise of illegal distillers known as moonshiners. In 1961, a rat named Hector became the first French animal sent into space, marking an important step in the nation's space program. The launch was carried out from the Hammaguir Test Center in Algeria using a Veronique rocket. Winston Churchill is recorded in 1928 working as a bricklayer at his Chartwell estate in Kent as he builds a cottage for his daughters. Known worldwide for his political leadership, Churchill also pursued many side activities, including writing, painting, and hands-on craftsmanship. Susan Peters, known as Hollywood's Girl Next Door, is portrayed in 1943 as her career was rising. Discovered by film at 18, Peters quickly earned notable roles and received an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress for Random Harvest in 1942. Model Kitty Nolan poses in front of the Tropicana Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas during the 1960s. Opened in 1957, the Tropicana quickly became one of the city's icons, known for modern architecture, lavish shows, and an atmosphere tied to nightlife glamour. Dorothy Dot Smith, a famous stunt motorcyclist of the 1930s and 1940s, is recorded in one of her striking moments on 2 wheels. Known for bold maneuvers, she stood out in a male-dominated scene and became an inspiration for other women riders. A Sami man is photographed in 1883 in the Kautokeino region in northern Norway, one of the key cultural centers of this indigenous people. The Sami live in areas of Scandinavia and Russia and are known for traditions tied to fishing, hunting, crafts, and reindeer herding. A couple is photographed in the 1960s, shortly before going to their high school prom, one of the most anticipated events of student life in the United States. The prom represented a celebration of the transition from youth to adulthood, marked by music, dancing, and social moments. Passengers have lunch in the dining car of the North Coast Limited in 1934, in a record that shows the charm of train travel at the time. Operated by the Northern Pacific Railway, the train ran between Chicago and the west coast of the United States, offering comfort and high-standard service. Bruce Lee is recorded in his training routine in the mid-1960s, a period when he solidified his martial arts philosophy and developed the style that would later be known as Jeet Kune Do. In addition to intense technical practice, Lee combined physical exercises. A forklift operator moves pallets of Chef Boyardee canned meals in a food distribution warehouse in Sonoma County, California during the 1960s. The brand, already very popular in the United States, offered ready-to-eat dishes such as canned spaghetti, a symbol of the growing processed food industry of the period. In 1927, the British Broadcasting Corporation's sound effects department is recorded in action, showing the creative work behind radio broadcasts. Since digital resources did not exist, sounds needed for plays, dramatizations, and entertainment programs were made manually with everyday objects, gadgets, and studio tricks. In 1988, the sitting President of the United States, Ronald Reagan, is photographed during a meeting with Mike Pence, who years later would become the nation's vice president in the administration of Donald Trump. At the time, Pence was a young attorney and radio host and was beginning to take part in local politics in Indiana. In 1970, British actor and comedian Marty Feldman is photographed in a moment that reflects his striking personality and unique cultural presence. Recognized for his prominent eyes and eccentric style, Feldman became one of the most unmistakable faces of British and international comedy. In the 1980s, Kame Fulsner is recorded in a photograph that reflects the style and cultural atmosphere of the period. It was a time marked by intense changes in fashion, music, and social behavior, elements that were directly reflected in how people presented themselves and were portrayed. In the 1960s in Istanbul, Turkey, a man is placed in a basket and carried home by workers known as basket men. These porters were hired especially to transport customers who, after visiting bars or taverns, could not make their way back on their own. In 1975, a young Jennifer Aniston appears beside her parents, John Aniston and Nancy Dow. John was a television actor, known mainly for his role on the soap opera Days of Our Lives, while Nancy worked as a model and actress. In 1865, in the city of Palermo, Italy, newly made pasta is seen drying on large lines outside a macaroni factory. Drying outdoors was common in the 19th century, taking advantage of a favorable Mediterranean climate to preserve and prepare the food before packaging and sale. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, please use the Super Thanks tool below. Your contribution helps us keep bringing you amazing historical content. Thank you so much for your support, and see you in the next video.